Welcome to Aura Room, a sacred space for soulful conversations, intuitive insight, and the subtle energies shaping our well being. I'm your host, Archita, and today we are exploring a shift that's happening beneath the surface of many people's lives. We're talking about the difference between 3D achievement focused living and 5D consciousness, not as concepts to understand intellectually, but as two fundamentally different ways of moving through the world. One is driven by striving, proving, and external validation, while the other is rooted in alignment, resonance, and inner knowing. Joining us today is Dr. Christian Oranje, award-winning international transformational speaker, mentor, best-selling author of The Elvis Syndrome, and a leading voice in the 5D transition. His work focuses on soul-seeking, high-achieving individuals, especially women who have mastered the 3D game of success, yet feel an unspoken disconnect from joy and fulfillment. With over 16 years at the intersection of psychology and spirituality, and named Spiritual Wellness Leader of the Year 2025, Dr. Christian offers a grounded, non conventional approach to awakening, one that helps people transition from achievement driven living to soul aligned consciousness. This episode isn't about rejecting ambition, it's about redefining what success actually means. So, Dr. Christian, welcome to Aura Room. It's a pleasure to host you today.
Thank you so much, Archita, and it is a real honor and privilege to be here on this interview with you and giving me an opportunity to share my knowledge, my insights, and experiences with your audience.
Amazing. I'm really looking forward to dive into this conversation. So, without wasting any time, Dr. Christian, let's start.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Yes.
and let's start with the foundation first. So, Dr. Christian, what exactly is 3D achievement focused living and how does it show up in people's everyday life?
Well, basically, you already mentioned it in your introduction, right? It is the world in which we strive and we hustle and we do our work and we focus on outer achievement, receiving external validation. It's basically what you already perfectly described.
Hmm, that's actually true. But could you explain to our listeners what are the hidden costs of staying in this 3D paradigm, even when someone appears successful?
The disadvantage of this kind of approach is that it unfortunately very often leads to a moment in time where usually, and that I speak from working with the affluent soul seeking women over 40 that I'm serving, and I use them as an example to point out certain principles that can be applied to anyone. The moment there's this focus on the outer world, building success, buying that fourth mansion, and so on and so forth. The new shoes and the handbags and by the way, that I don't mean to um, be disrespectful in this because it has its value, and of course, it is something to enjoy. The problem comes in when the external validations and holding on to these outer, let's say, objects and achievements and the status and the wealth that has been accumulated, there is the risk, and often it leads to a disconnection from what I call one's essence, one's true self, one's soul. And then that can lead into experiences of, while having it all, still feel empty. While having it all, still feel unfulfilled. And no matter how much more wealth, how much more shoes, how much more, you name it, is accumulated, this feeling of feeling unfulfilled is not being satisfied and actually never will. Uh, it makes someone utterly unhappy. And then it can lead even to shame, to guilt, having these kind of thoughts like, well, who am I to feel this way because I have it all, and look at all these other people who have not, and how privileged I am, and so on and so forth. And there is something more about particularly affluent women, and that is that in the world of high society, there's an unspoken rule that it is not done and considered to be not done or to speak openly about the deeper and the more darker feelings and thoughts someone experience, and that leads inevitably to a situation where one starts to repress those kind of what you could call negative feelings and thoughts. And the disadvantage there is that there's a what you could call a universal law, a principle at play here, and that says the moment you repress the feelings you do not like to feel or the thoughts you don't want to think, you automatically, therefore, cut off your ability and reduce your ability to experience the feelings that you do want to feel. You find yourself in a kind of a trap there, and that leads then to a further spiral of withdrawal, of isolation, with feeling not any energy anymore. You wake up more tired than you go to bed, and you have nothing to look forward to, and you start to lose the connection with friends, with the social circles you're a member of. So it can really spiral in something very, what you could call, dramatic.
That explains so much. It explains why people, they can often have everything on paper and still feel empty inside.
Mhm.
So, yeah, what you said, it totally makes sense now. But,
Mhm.
Dr. Christian,
Yeah.
what shifts when someone moves into 5D consciousness, and how does the inner experience change? I mean, how does life start to look different on the outside?
The challenge here is that there is a kind of a delay between how it expresses itself outwardly and uh, and going on that journey of the transition into a fifth dimensional way of living. First and foremost, I want to point out that the fifth dimensional way of living and working, because that might for someone be applied, is not a place to go to. It refers to an inner shift. The transition into 5D happens inwardly. Secondly, and I know there are people who disagree with me, but I find enough arguments and reasons why I think my approach that I'm going to present is valid. The jump that it is not, well, you could say, some say it is possible, but let's say for the sake of conversation, it is not possible to jump into 5D right away. What needs to happen is that we need to move through the fourth dimension, first of all. And then the other aspect of it is that, yes, there we will find certain qualities in 5D. And we are actually invited, and that is the moving through the fourth dimension is serving that. We are invited to already cultivate and explore and actually start living those qualities we find in 5D already now here, while we are still bound in some way or form to this 3D reality, which means that still living here in 3D, applying already these kind of qualities of 5D, it is also a kind of a universal law that what happens within, eventually, if you hold on to these qualities firmly enough and stay focused on it as much as possible, it cannot go otherwise than it at some point it will show up in the outer circumstances. Now, how will it show up? That's very, very individually. It's very much dependent on the person who is practicing this, what kind of situations they are in. And it is very much dependent on their vision and their desire of what kind of life they want actually be living.
Hmm. So, doctor, that makes me curious to understand that when someone moves into 5D consciousness, as you said, does that also mean letting go of goals and ambitions altogether, or is there a different way to hold them?
I would say that living in a 5D, the fifth dimensional way of living, is actually makes it easier to establish and to see the goals you set will be manifested, but to keep the conversation more grounded and into the here and now, um, rather than speaking about what actually is to be found in 5D, I think it's more beneficial to speak about why the fourth dimension, why it is necessary to move through that fourth dimension first. And it could also be helpful to actually address certain kind of characteristics we will find in 5D, of which we are invited to live it already now. So let's start with the letter. The As an example, in 5D, what we will find is a much more fluid state of living. It's not that controlled, it's not that organized and that's rigid and strict. The characteristic is, to put it another way, is a new kind of standard we are living by, and that new standard is uncertainty. Uncertainty means being so much in the moment where past and future join that we are not that much concerned about what happens next because we come from a place of knowing that when we do in the moment the right things, we think the right thoughts, we feel the correct feelings, then it will automatically, so to speak, come to fruition, come to manifestation, becomes visible. And that touches on the second quality we will find. In 5D, we will be given the ability to instantly manifest what we choose to think and feel. And then a third element that is very important to add, we will be much more conscious of the fact that we are all interconnected. We all breathe the same air, so to speak, which means that we see the other person, the other people we meet as us. We see ourselves in others and vice versa, which means, and in fact, results into a much more kinder and loving way we relate to each other, knowing that if we would harm others, in fact, we would harm ourselves. Now, again, I want to emphasize that the qualities I mentioned that awaits us in 5D, we are invited, for those who want to embark on that journey, to already practice those qualities here in our 3D reality, the 3D reality we've been living in for centuries. Take a moment. I invite you, all the listeners here on the interview, to take a moment to envision applying, approaching others with more kindness and love, and imagine that that means to be less, or maybe even to come a point that you're not judgmental anymore. Can you imagine, can you feel already to come from that kind of state of being that the circumstances, the people will you meet will start to adapt and change accordingly to that particular quality alone?
That's a powerful distinction, doctor. I mean, ambition with alignment versus ambition from fear. And I
Mhm,
think a lot of listeners will feel that. And yeah, I mean, at the end, how you explained it with
mhm,
an illustration, I think that's great.
mhm,
And
mhm,
thank you for sharing that. So moving
Yeah,
on.
but there's one other thing I mentioned earlier,
Yeah.
and that is the necessity, the value of exploring a bit more why I am such an advocate of saying that it is important to move through the fourth dimension first. And that has to do with this. We all have lived a life in which certain things happened that um, made us believe certain things, made us cultivate certain habits to protect ourselves, to survive certain very, very difficult situations we have been, may have been in. And to also to a point where we, let's say, and I refer now to specifically to events that were sudden, unexpected, and had a severe negative impact, call it traumatic effect on us. Those moments are so overwhelming what is happening and so sudden that we are unable to cope with all the feelings that are stirred up and touched in us. So what we do in order to survive, we just need to push it back into our subconscious in order to deal with whatever we need to deal with. And that all what I mentioned, the kind of beliefs, often limiting beliefs that are not actually true, but in our perception they are. The emotional charges that are still the residue of what we have encountered in the past, and the habits that come from it. That is, we capture that and call that our conditioning. It is our conditioning that at first has served us well, but over time it has become outdated, and even to the point that it is not helpful and supportive anymore, and still we keep applying them. And of course, yes, there are reasons for that, and that we may touch on this in the interview also, maybe not. But the thing here is that it's the conditionings that once served us, uh, which at some point can take us hostage. We have the feeling that we become imprisoned by those feelings that once served us. And it is actually those feelings that, although they served us in the past, now is causing us harm, are creating circumstances that makes us utterly unhappy and also greatly disturbing and negative interfering what we wish to manifest but doesn't negatively interfere the relationships we have and make it very unpleasant, and so on and so forth. Can you imagine for a moment when the conditioning you carry and the effects you see in your daily life and in your relationships and you name it, your physical health, not to forget, when you would take that what you're now carrying with you untouched, unchanged, into the 5D way of living? When you would do it, and when it would be possible to make that jump from now on, from where you are now, immediately into the 5D dimensional way of living, it would continue to greatly disturb that what you find there, as it is already disturbing here now in the 3D reality. You see? So therefore, I think that that is a valid reason enough to at least consider that moving through the fourth dimensional um, realm is important because of three reasons. First, it is a time of gaining greater clarity. And I'm particularly referring to gaining the clarity about what it is actually that we are carrying within our sub and unconscious. Because here's the thing, we can only change something, we can only work on changing something when we are aware of it. And yes, we are created with a conscious and with a subconscious and with an unconscious mind. And the characteristic of the subconscious and unconscious mind is, as you probably know, that we have stored things in there of which we are not yet or not anymore conscious of. So the question becomes here, well, If that's true, if that's really true that we only can work with what we are conscious of, and the characteristic of the sub and unconscious is that we forget about what we stored in there, how can we become conscious of that what we're not yet or not anymore conscious of? And that is where the fourth dimension comes into play. The fourth dimension creates circumstances, creates encounters with particular people. It creates physical conditions which serve and underline serve your transformational journey in putting up a mirror which works as a road sign pointing at exactly that what you're not yet conscious of and which is necessary for you to face and to bring forth into your awareness in order to give you the opportunity to heal and transform it. That's one aspect of it. The second aspect is what I already mentioned is that it serves to already practice how it is to manifest what we want, and investigate the relationship between the thoughts and the feelings that we use to manifest it. When it doesn't, when we only get half of it, when it at sometimes, and I speak from experience, we create the opposite of what we actually want. That's a clear sign that yes, we thought we were working with the thoughts consciously, but apparently in our sub and unconscious, there are certain thoughts running the show that is totally overruling the conscious thoughts. So then that puts up on us on a track of asking the question, well, what are then the underlying thoughts that have produced those results of which I'm not yet conscious? And the third element is actually what I already mentioned, is to give us an opportunity to become aware of those conditionings that we carry in our unconscious and do the work. And often, deep transformational work is necessary because very often, and that is what I experience more and more in the type of clients that come to me in this particular day and age, and the issues they present, those issues that we are now encountering and need to face are deeply rooted and very firmly anchored within our subconscious and even with our unconscious. And here we touch actually on something which I consider to be the start of such a new chapter in your life, of transforming needs to be transformed to need what needs to be freed up, which needs to offer space for that 3D way of living to come towards us and for us to come towards it. And that is that what particularly holds us back in doing that particular work is the fear and resistance some parts of us hold against doing deeper transformational work. I'm pretty sure that only using and naming the process deep transformational work has a certain effect on the listeners here, or some of the listeners here on the interview at least, which is oh, kind of alarm goes off. What? Deep transformation? Oh, that's not for me. The importance of addressing it is that it doesn't need to be. It's very much based on ignorance. It's very much based on having never had someone to explain what actually deep transformation work means, how it is done, and what is actually necessary to do it in a safe and secure way. Because if is explained properly, as I do, then I, in all cases, see the fear and the resistance of stepping in to make the decision to go on that particular journey is greatly reduced.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing all of that, Dr. Christian. And I agree with everything, and especially the aspect you said about conditioning. And I believe that everyone has been conditioned to look into life in such a way that they only see external validation as important, and the 3D the 3D way of living, I feel like
Mhm.
it provides them a way to put all of those things behind and look at what's really important. And many high achievers are conditioned to measure their worth by what they accomplish and not how they really are or what they feel. So I feel like I think your program. It's great, and today's conversation has helped me a lot to understand these things better, and I'm sure that our listeners feel the same way. So, Dr. Christian, if they want to, if our listeners, if they want to reach out to you, learn more about the 5D way of living, so how can they do that? Could you just share with them?
Sure. So, for anyone listening who feels that something of what I've shared resonated, I love to offer you a little gift. It's a short downloadable ebook called The 5 Steps to Transform Any Negative Feeling or Thought Anytime, Anywhere in 7 minutes or less. And I created it because for many years in my own life, I carried emotions far longer than I needed to. Simply because, and I already mentioned it, I had no one ever showing me that they could be transformed much quicker, even when needed instantly in the moment. And the advantage of this ritual I put together is that it prevents you from suppressing of what you don't like to feel or think, and instead to turn them into feelings and thoughts that energize, empower, and uplift you. You will find the link in the show notes. It's a simple download and you receive it by email. And in addition, for those of you who have it all, yet still feel unfulfilled, and sense the desire to take a deeper step to free yourself from what is burdening you. For you, I'm also offering a complimentary From Pointless to Purpose Treasure Map consultation. It's a 1 hour conversation where you can experience how I work, ask your questions directly, and explore whether I am the right person to assist you in making the changes that may set you free. Just to be clear, this is a no pressure consultation. There are no obligations. It is simply an invitation to explore.
Great. So I'll have all the details on my show listing, just as Dr. Christian has just said, and our listeners can feel free to reach out to him anytime they want. So, Dr. Christian, thank you so much for being such a lovely guest today and providing us with so much, important information. And yeah, thank you. And to our listeners, here's a simple practice to try over the next few days. Before making a decision, big or small, pause and ask yourself, am I doing this to prove something or because it genuinely resonates with me? Don't judge the answer, just notice it. That awareness is the beginning of your dimensional shift. If this episode resonated, share it with someone who's tired of chasing external success and ready to explore what alignment actually feels like. And if Aura Room feels like a space you return to, follow the show, leave a review, and help this energetic sanctuary reach more open hearts. The shift from 3D to 5D isn't about abandoning your life, it's about remembering who you are beneath all the doing. It's frequency you embody. A way of living that feels lighter, truer, and deeply your own. Thank you for stepping into the Aura Room today, for listening beyond the words and honoring your inner evolution.